Now, let's bring in Fox News contributor Joe Concha joining us from New York. Joe, this CBS thing is absolutely wild to me, having worked in journalism for decades, and there's a lot of pressure on CBS to release the full transcript of that interview. Ex-CBS News reporter Catherine Hareed, who was reportedly laid off earlier this year, says CBS did release the full unedited transcript of her interview with Trump back in 2020. Why won't they do the same thing here with Kamala Harris?
Unless they have something to hide, James, right? So that's the thing. We know about this edit because the first clip that you showed was used in the promo leading up to the interview airing here in the U.S. on Sunday night. Then when you watch the actual interview, it disappeared like you just showed. So how many other clips are we not aware of where you use the perfect two words, word salad, was on the top of the menu? So all CBS has to do, it's very simple right now for that news division, release the entire interview on cbsnews.com. Let everyone see it from start to finish without any edits, any jump cuts. Release the transcript while you're at it, but CBS only released the transcript of the edited portion of the interview. Why is that, CBS? And when you reach out to actually ask them a question around, well, why did you do this? They won't respond or even give a comment on this. So they know they're caught. The question is now, what happens from here? Well, they've become the story, and any answer that Kamala Harris gave, it's not even the story anymore.
But, Joe, there's more problems at CBS. It's not just this 60 Minutes incident. Apparently, another one of their reporters has been forced to undergo what you'd call a Maoist struggle session because he had the nerve to question author Ta-Nehisi Coates about his book about race relations that was highly critical of Israel. And apparently, because he pushed back on this narrative, he got in trouble. Walk us through what's happening here and how what looks to me like that kind of campus culture that we saw sweep across academia is now infecting the institutions of American media.
Well, an anchor on the CBS Morning Show, Tony DeCopel, actually did his job. He asked tough questions of Ta-Nehisi Coates, who you just mentioned, a very controversial figure. Let's put it this way. Coates has said in the past that Israel actually is an apartheid state and has implied repeatedly that it does not have the right to exist. So if you're an anchor and you have somebody like that across from you, yes, you're going to ask some tough questions. But what happens just a couple of days later? They have an all-hands staff editorial meeting. Somebody secretly records it because some people join by Zoom. And the executives running that meeting, James, were Wendy McMahon and Adrian Work. They basically run CBS News. And they threw Tony DeCopel under the bus in front of all of his colleagues, called him morally wrong, and said he had the wrong tone with Coates. Gee, I wonder if he interviewed Donald Trump in a tough fashion, if there would be that rebuke. Of course, that would not happen. All he did was simply ask tough questions of Coates, and this is what CBS News is today at this point. It's a complete meltdown over there because the head of Paramount Global, that's the parent company of CBS News, her name's Sherry Redstone. You maybe remember Sumner Redstone, that was her dad. She has publicly defended DeCopel. So you have CBS executives admonishing him while the head person says she was proud of him. And all of this is happening. The next day, CBS hired, I don't know if you heard this, a trauma trainer, DEI expert who happens to be completely and totally anti-Trump to help the staff heal from the trauma that was DeCopel's questions in that interview. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Journalists traumatized by tough questions. This is the new campus culture gone everywhere. It's gone mad. But, Joe, I want to talk to you a little bit more about the media, too, because we've had this amazing Kamala Harris media blitz. I spoke about it a little earlier in the show. But you've written in the New York Post that this has been a massive flop, and the fact that she keeps giving terrible answers to simple questions like about what she would do differently, like one she gave on The View. Have a look at this.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Joe, every time I see her like this, it's like deer in the headlights, and it's kind of like Bart Simpson when he didn't read the book before the book report. What do you make of this? What is the point of this strategy?
Oh, James, it's a deer in the headlights right before the deer is about to be taken out by a semi. I mean, she looks scared, Tim Walz is somehow worse, which I didn't think was possible. But yep, he's that bad in interviews also. I mean, this is the quandary now for Kamala and her campaign. If you keep her in the so-called basement, like they tried to do for 2.5 months, then voters don't really get to know her, and the fear of the unknown becomes real, because we all know Donald Trump. We saw his presidency. We know what he's about. There's no brand name recognition there, or she's flip-flop on so many issues that people really don't know her. But if you put her out there, even in the friendliest of environments like The View, she can't handle the easiest of T-ball questions. And after 2 days of Kamala Harris being the focus for once and not Donald Trump for the most part, this so-called media blitz was absolutely a net negative, because the only clips that are making the rounds after the fact on social media, to the tune of millions of views, far more people than were watching those actual shows, shows once again that Kamala Harris is all bubbles and no bath, all salt and no tequila, all sizzle, no steak. Use your analogy when it comes to substance. And that's why Donald Trump has serious momentum right now. When you look at the polls here in the U.S., he is the favorite to win again. And the betting markets certainly believe that by a pretty decisive margin at this point.
I don't know, Joe. I mean, just on that margarita analogy, I think there might be no tequila because Kamala drank it all, or at least some people might suggest that. Not me, of course. But, hey, a serious one, though, for you here. There's this horrifyingly scary story about an Afghan citizen living in Oklahoma who has been charged with plotting an election day terror attack on behalf of Islamic State. And now it has come out that, he was led into the country, but also apparently he worked as a CIA guard in Afghanistan. This after the Biden administration had claimed that everybody who had been brought over to America from Afghanistan had been vetted. Does this just show more of the real danger that people are in America because of the lax way that they just seem to be letting anybody in?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the reports from Joe Biden's own Department of Homeland Security and from the FBI, hundreds of terrorists have entered this country in the last 3.5 years. And those are the ones we know about, right? I would imagine the skilled ones aren't getting apprehended at the border, and they could be planning another October 7th as we speak. We know about the terror plots, the assassination plot, I should say, against Donald Trump coming out of Iran. And you have to think that eventually these people are going to act, maybe even before an election. And this is all because, once again, of Kamala Harris, the border czar, who didn't do a thing about the border for all those years. The same person who compared ICE to the KKK, said that illegal border crossings should be legal. It's all on tape. Wants to give sex changes to illegals that enter the country illegally and have U.S. taxpayers pay for it. It's all on tape. And that's why I think ultimately, once people get to know Kamala Harris again, she is not going to be very well accepted as she was in 2019 when she had to drop out even before she got to 2020 in Iowa.
Absolutely right. Thank you so much, Joe Concha. Always a pleasure. Really appreciate your time.